Hello, welcome to All Good Points. I'm Paul North.
I'm George McBride.
Welcome to the show. What we got this week, George? What's been going on? In fact, it's 2 weeks since we last recorded an episode.
Or more, I think. Maybe 3. Is it?
Call it 2 and a bit because 3 makes it sound unprofessional.
Yeah, sorry. Stoners.
Start right, fuck that. Cut!
Let's carry on, it's fine. First thing first is a shout out for interns at Hanway. We have some summer internships available. If you're interested in interning at Hanway Associates, get in touch, please. Various different roles from people with scientific to policy to business expertise. So chuck in an application if you're interested.
Do get in touch because these guys always try to steal my stuff. So Georgia and Lily, anytime they meet Vaultfast staff, they're like, "Oh, you should come work at Hanway." I'm like, "No, Leeds, get away from my stuff." Yeah, so intern with you.
So we stop stealing everybody else's staff. Yeah.
You're a good team to work for.
I think so.
I'll endorse it.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
I'm not sure how much weight that carries, but I'll endorse it.
Lots of little stories at the moment, really, isn't it? There hasn't been some big bang, huge story. Lots of talk about minor cannabinoids everywhere. Everyone talking about Delta-8 THC, which is starting to be regulated in some states in the US, and THCV and the others, most of which aren't allowed in the UK by virtue of the Psychoactive Substances Act.
Yeah.
So they're harder to get your hands on here, but there is an interest outside of THC and CBD, which starts to be growing. What's
different about Delta-8 THC? Is that just a specific type?
It's a bit milder in terms of its effects, and lots of people report it as being better to use during the day while you're active, not just in front of a movie. So the reason that it's been so popular is you can synthesize it from CBD, from hemp derived, and obviously hemp's legal across the whole of the US. So you can take very cheap CBD and cheaply turn it into Delta-8 THC. Okay. So the FDA have come out and said, this, isn't industrial hemp. Stop doing that.
That is not what you're meant to do with hemp.
But meanwhile, loads of people have found a cheap and milder alternative to THC, which is actually becoming popular on its own merit.
Could you get quite high off it? I know it might sound like a daft question, but if you had quite a bit of it, would that just feel like having?
I guess so, but I don't know whether it just has a kind of glass ceiling of the effect. But anyone out there who's been using Delta-8 THC, please wade in. I haven't tried it yet. Yeah. It's a new thing-ish.
I
it's
feel
been around for a bit in America.
Immediately, I'm more interested in that. I think I've always said this before. I know that the exciting thing about the cannabis market and cannabinoids is the variety of experience, and I think moving away from that classic you take it, you get really high, which I know some people there's totally a place for that, there's totally a place for that, but having that more breadth of experience,
it's nice having something really in the middle ground, because CBD obviously no effect in terms of psychoactive really, versus THC, which is obviously quite powerful, but there is this broad spectrum of compounds in between, and I want to try them personally. THCV sounds fun. Appetite suppressant, so the opposite of the munchies.
Appetite suppressant. That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's produced in high amounts, relatively high amounts in one of the Congolese varieties, but then it's now starting to become popular as a tincture and extract in the US for people who want a kind of a nice feeling, but they don't want the munchies and they want a bit of energy. So that kind of moves on to another one of the stories as well, which is in this area of other cannabinoids and other chemicals which target those receptors in your brain, is Oxford Cannabinoid Therapies, founded a few years ago in partnership with
Captain Picard.
Captain Picard.
Yeah, from Star Trek, or is that a different group? You know, the guy that played Picard in Star Trek. I don't know his actual name, but I just do you know what I mean? The X-Men. Xavier.
Yeah. I know who you mean, but what the hell does he have to do with it?
He's involved.
Oh, really? Patrick Stewart's
him
involved.
and Snoop Dogg, wasn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure he was involved
Snoop Dogg's involved by virtue of the fact that he has a fund called Casa Verde, which invests in a range of different cannabis businesses who are invested. And there are some of the founders I know, and then in partnership with a part of Oxford University. But they are now focusing on developing alternative compounds for targeting your endocannabinoid system and pushing them through clinical trials. And they are going to list on the London Stock Exchange. And it's a pharmaceutical alternative, plan.
The listings are ticking over nicely now, aren't they? From Cannabo and MGC.
And Hellenic are listing soon. So there are a lot more businesses coming onto the stock exchange.
And there are lots prepping for it in the background, aren't there?
Oh, yeah.
There's tons of companies that are giving up for it in the UK.
There are indeed. So expect to see much more of that. What else do we have in
Slipknot?
the news? Slipknot.
It's a celebrity watch. We've got Slipknot now.
Yeah, we're going back to Celebrity Watch.
I guess they count as a celebrity. Pretty famous band out there.
Famous for grungers of our age.
Yeah.
I
guess it's a sensible fit. Isn't the weed that they're selling like 40% THC? It's basically as strong as you could.
Yeah. It's basically just smoking like keef, just rolled up.
Just so predictable.
Yeah, it is a bit predictable. The packaging looks quite jokes.
What is it, like a nail?
No, it's like really scary green clown on matte black. Very Slipknot looking,
Slipknot
like a luminous green on a matte black.
Are you happy with that one? Are you giving them Are you happy with Slipknot entering the space, or are you upset at that one? Because there's been quite a few celebrity watches where you I feel like it annoys you.
Yeah, I'm not going to be buying it, but it's not my cup of tea.
With your hoodie on.
Yeah.
With your clown face.
At the other end of the spectrum of news from Slipknot launching high THC pre-rolls is the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency in the US, have finally got their act together in granting more licenses. We've mentioned this on the show before because it's been ticking along, but previously it's only been University of Mississippi who are allowed to do federally legal research into cannabis, which is kind of outrageous considering the situation in terms of legal access in the US, and still hardly any research going on. So fantastic that is finally happening, and we're going to see some higher quality research coming out of the USA. Because one of the problems with cannabis, well, a problem and a benefit, is the compassionate access went so well in the US in terms of facilitating compassionate access to people who need it, that the kind of research side was slightly ignored. And one of
the compassionate access, was that basically their medical cannabis scheme?
Yeah.
Was that like their initiative to allow access for people that need it for medical health purposes, and led to the sort of medical ID card sort of thing?
Yeah, and that all went quite well, but then has meant that there has been access, and then the push for better research hasn't really happened to the same extent.
Well, it just became kind of wrecked, didn't it, in a lot of places?
Yeah.
It just became like, you get a card, you get access, rather than
which is great.
Medical. But again, I'm not knocking that, but
the lack of federal progress has been atrocious, obviously, and it's that fully legal stuff that needs to happen to actually get much better research. But there's good research coming out of Canada and other places, but finally the US is joining that.
Yeah, it's got a bit quiet in Canada, hasn't it? Like cannabis news wise, I haven't seen loads of stuff in the past month or two. Do you think it's
everyone in the cannabis sector has bailed and is now launching a
US
psychedelic company or a US company? Yeah,
it's kind of got a bit quiet for them, hasn't it?
Yeah,
but there's not. A few. Well, maybe it was like 6 months ago. We were saying, some of these companies might not exist. To be fair, none of them have gone under, have they? So like Canopy, obviously still knocking around. Aurora still knocking around. Like,
well, I think they were.
Mergers,
I think I don't know the extent to which they were, but there was. I think some have been saved by Corona, weirdly, because firstly, the COVID pandemic, increased use and sales.
Yeah.
It also, it acted as a catalyst for the industry across the whole of North America, but it also made it easier for businesses to access the relief packages, furlough staff, so companies that potentially were going to fold at the beginning of last year have potentially been able to restructure, focus, and increase sales.
And sell.
Yeah. So I think the pandemic has been good for cannabis companies. And then, like you say, there's been a lot of consolidation with companies merging and acquiring each other. The Tilray Afria merger went through since we last spoke, I think. The GW acquisition by Jazz closed as well since we were last there. Yeah. So they're all 100% locked in now. But I think there is still this wave of failure to come from a lot of the Canadian cannabis companies.
Just delayed it. It's just delayed it.
Yeah.
Coronavirus delayed it a bit. And they did. The Canadian government did quite well, didn't they? Because I think that the model, you couldn't have it in a lot of provinces. You couldn't have weed delivered to your door, could you? There was only certain provinces where it was permitted due to restrictions, but due to Corona, they lifted that, didn't they, and facilitated sort of to the door Deliveroo style.
Yeah.
Well, obviously not Deliveroo style in it. Maybe they did have apps. Anyway, I know in the US they've got apps and stuff like that. I don't know if they've got it in Canada, but yeah, that's interesting that Corona could have kind of saved them.
Back to the UK.
The I Am Billy campaign launched with the magnificent Charlotte Caldwell,
Woo!
who we've known for a few years now. 4 years? 3 years? 4?
4, I think.
When we did the first campaign.
Yeah.
Which is pretty great. Check it out at www.iambilly.uk.
Very few, if any, individuals who've had as big of an impact on the UK cannabis policy than Charlotte Caldwell and Billy.
Easily. And I've always I've said this to Charlotte, I've kind of said it publicly as well. The thing I like about Charlotte is anytime she's approached an issue like this, like when you're in the advocacy space, and particularly the sort of role that Charlotte occupies, it's very easy to just get angry and be very critical of government and go to government with like problem, frustration, and that's like from working in treatment for so long and seeing people experience pain and like what that can do in terms of engagement, it makes total sense. But I think one thing that Charlotte's always stayed really true to, and one thing you can see from the campaign is it's about going to government in a really positive way, a really solution-focused way, and being like, look, here's a really good, solid idea backed by leading clinicians in which the UK government can work with the NHR, work with the MHRA, work with the NHS to do a really meaningful trial and gather data. Because that's been a huge roadblock, hasn't it, in the NHS embracing it. I think a lot of us that work in this space have that ambition of cannabis-based medicines being prescribed on the NHS. Like, we talked about that for years, haven't we? People should be able to access cannabis-based medicines. We know how effective they are. We can see how effective they are with Billy. Everyone should be able to access drugs that have a life-saving effect. But that lack of evidence that we have in the UK and those restrictions has just disastrous implications, right? Charlotte is bombarded with calls from people all the time up and down the country who are struggling to get access or in similar conditions. So, like, it's so important to have a positive conversation with government in which we go, look, here's something different. It's not just a registry, it's not just what's already been done, it's not trying to do what's already been done. It's a new positive solution that can move things forward, which is timely, I think. Because as we're talking about, like, the clinic, it's gathering momentum now. Medical cannabis is starting to get talked about more, but we just need to, we can't just stop there, I don't think. I don't want it to just sit in the private.
No, that would be a great shame, wouldn't it?
Massive shame.
So if anyone is going to engage the NHS properly and start building that evidence-based, it is Charlotte. So everyone look at iambilly.uk. And then meanwhile, in Spain, there is finally some progress in terms of getting people access to a properly legal medical scheme. Or at least they are actively now looking into it in Spain.
What's their current setup as it is? Because I know they've got the sort of like got social clubs, but that's really, I think we spoke about before, I've been confused by it because it's really different in Catalonia, right? Than it is.
It's not just Catalonia. There's a nationwide. The situation is that there was decriminalisation forced by a court decision, which then opened the door for cannabis social clubs, which are, in legal theory, a number of different medical patients coming together to collectively grow what the amount of cannabis that they're allowed, but pool resources so that everyone isn't just growing their own 2 plants in their garden or their loft, so that they can all come together. Which is how
classic model. It's like the classic. You pay an amount based on how many plants that you're sort of effectively growing, and then you can then get weed to the equivalent of the plants that you put in money for.
That is the theory. Yeah.
How does it work?
In practice, they're just shops that don't pay tax in a lot of places.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's quite chill. Yeah.
So, I'm not deriding the thing. I quite like the situation in Spain, but there are a number of places where you can go online, email them, say I'd like to be a member, pay £20 for a membership card, turn up and buy whatever products you want.
This is pretty poor regulation.
Well, I don't know, or is that the regulation doing really well? Becoming a nice, seamless, easy point of access. But it's not what it was supposed to be in some places. And there are now, ones that are more geared up to the tourist market, whether it's in Barcelona or Madrid or out in Tenerife.
Can you go as a tourist? I thought you had to be sort of a Spanish citizen.
I've been to like a dozen Spanish social clubs and bought stuff in all of them. So
you speak Spanish though?
I don't
speak Spanish at all.
No, I do speak a bit of Spanish. Speak a bit of Spanish, but it's pretty rusty. Enough to buy weed. And get myself a hotel room or whatever. Not enough to have a very interesting conversation.
Some of them are quite dodgy out there. I remember some of them are a little bit on the whole, is this legit? Is this gangster sort of vibe?
Yeah, because obviously everybody involved in the wholesale black market cannabis business want to also influence the retail. So there are the organised crime groups who control the production of cannabis, who are also involved in the ownership of the coffee shops, social clubs. So Spain's system is odd because it's decriminalised, it's very casual, Spanish people are very open about cannabis consumption, most communities have pretty much welcomed the social clubs, and yet there's no medical access whatsoever. One of the most strict regimes in all of Europe in terms of legal medical. And then there is, and it further complicated by the semi-autonomous regions like Basque and Catalonia and all the rest of them, who have their own regulations that they're pushing for adult use and medical cannabis schemes that are all kind of in conflict with the Spanish federal system. So it's a complicated patchwork, which is kind of good for access and light on regulation. So missing out on opportunities around improved safety of the products, tax, etc. But it's better than the British situation, I would say that pretty comfortably. Although at least we have a starting to function medical market. And I think like on that medical market, I don't know if you're on the Reddit and stuff, or like there's a few Facebook groups, but I think someone said the other day there's like 5,000 patients. That might be a bit. I think that's about right. You reckon it's 5,000? 4,000 and something, I think, in the UK. I think that's about right. Although the problem that you've got is that not everybody actually enjoys the process and the product. So there are people who sign up, get their and drop off. So we don't know. We're not getting accurate data on the patient retention. The retention rate. So we don't know whether but I think there have been over 4,000 people in the UK who have got access to legal cannabis. But quite how many there are who are actually buying a prescription month to month, I don't know. Certainly more. Do you get the feeling that more people are aware of it though? Because I do. I get the vibe that like all these Reddit groups and stuff, Facebook groups, every day there are more and more people. And I know it's it's not like in its hundreds and thousands every day, but it's growing. So like surely that's going to snowball. Like in a year. We did the open. We helped with the Open Cannabis campaign, and part of that was trying to dispel some of the myths around medical cannabis in the UK, which is, it's impossible to get and it's prohibitively expensive, it's just not true anymore. No, it actually, if you've got one of a very long list of conditions for which it could potentially be prescribed, and you've tried a couple of medications and they haven't worked, then you've got a very good chance of getting it. And once you get it, it's likely to be cheaper than what you're getting in the black market.
Yeah.
So,
which is that's come a hell of a long
it's a
way
pretty
from when it first
compelling
started.
position.
Yeah. It's come a hell of a long way, and you get a valid prescription. Like that's such a benefit in battling back on that stigma, getting acceptance from friends and families, like avoiding legal prosecution. Like that in itself is worth. Do you know what I mean? Even if it was still like a little bit more, it's legal. You know what I mean? Like that in itself is like such a protective measure.
Yeah.
In it, but
oh, I just kicked the mic just for a sound effect.
sorry, Ben.
Boom.
That's it. Ben's deaf. Just deaf and Ben. Yeah, it was a good. Yeah, I think it's good. Good progress on the medical cannabis front here in the UK. Even though
and we do have cannabis social clubs.
It's easy to beat it up. Do you know what I mean? It's easy to be negative about it.
We do have cannabis social clubs in the UK, and they are fighting for proper legal recognition. It's really unfortunate that the courts in the UK have not protected medical patients' interests and opened up the kind of opportunity for having a legally protected scheme like in Spain. But nevertheless, there are a number of cannabis social clubs in the UK who are fighting for proper regulation and also working properly as collaboratives, and that's still like a useful.
They've gone quite quiet though, aren't they? I've noticed. Like
I
used to get trolled by them every week, and that stopped a while ago.
They do seem to be a lot quieter. Also, I don't know if I'm just getting older and therefore miss out on it, but I feel like there are less cannabis speakeasies in London than there were a few years ago. There used to be more places you could drop in and buy weed that were semi-obvious. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I just don't feel like I've been in the centre of London. Well, London just for so long. Don't know what the vibe is. There's probably still a place in Deptford. There's a place in Deptford that someone told me about where it's a furniture shop, but you go and speak to a guy in the back and go, all right, mate, just here for pick something up, and he knocks on the floor and a little hand pops up. Don't know if you heard about the Deptford place.
I don't know about the Deptford place, but I used to have a place like that when I was a teenager in North Clapham, which was good.
Just a shop.
You just had to go in and buy a can of Coke, and then you bought the can of Coke and you walk out the back, and then there'd be the guy with
what was the can of Coke sort of like?
The can of Coke was like a can of Coke, and they just had a fridge full of
cans of Coke. It's a popular product.
But they got annoyed with people who tried to just go out the back where everyone was smoking and dealing, because they needed to make sure everyone left with a receipt so they could be like, they did all buy something, but everyone just bought a can of Coke. But that one just got shut down.
Yeah, imagine it's hard to keep up in the modern era with the cannabis, what they're called, the cannabis dismantling squad.
But not for long. If Sadiq comes out and his commission does something on cannabis in London, we could see people being more protected. Come on, Sadiq.
Fingers crossed.
You know you want to.
Fingers crossed. What else we got, George? Is that our news?
I think that is broadly our news. Let me see.
That's our news. Don't forget to come work at Hanway. Stop stealing my stuff. That's the news. All right, wicked. George's just gone into scroll mode. He's gone. Yeah, no, that's the week before. Wicked. All right. Thanks, George. Good to see you in an office, real people. Thanks, everyone, for interrupting. Thanks, Georgia. Thanks, Georgia, for taking calls when you said you won't. I appreciate that a lot. And we'll twice. Yeah, twice. And we'll catch you next week.